Boo! Infinite Jest is the literary equivalent of Third Eye Blind, Semi-Charmed Life. It tells stories of addiction in a peppy, upbeat vehicle that truly challenges the audience to really pay attention for you to hear its main messages. The best analogy that I can come up with is that reading Infinite Jest is like eating a Rice Krispie bar. It's delicious, but so chewy that it might start to hurt your jaw after a while. However, I do believe that the difficult reputation that Infinite Jest gets is a little overstated. So, what is Infinite Jest? Basically, the novel follows two parallel storylines that begin to intersect both in theme and in action as the novel goes on. We follow Hal Incandenza, arguably the novel's protagonist, and his famously dysfunctional family, the Incandenzas, who are essentially owners of the Boston area Enfield Tennis Academy, where the entire family is either students, previous students, or members of the administration. Now, Hal's father, the famous J.O. Incandenza, a indie auteur filmmaker, has created a killer film called Infinite Jest, the title of the novel, which is apparently so pleasurable to watch that anybody who views the film, even for a little bit, suddenly never wants to do anything else with their lives and slowly wither away and die. Story 2 follows various residents of the Ennet Alcohol and Drug Recovery House, which is just a few blocks away from the Enfield Tennis Academy. But in the background, the novel is set in a near-future post-apocalyptic America where Canada, the United States, and Mexico have joined forces to become the Organized Nations of American Nations, or ONAN for short, as they call it in the novel, which, by the way, there isn't necessarily a year assigned to the events of the book, because in the world of Infinite Jest, all years have been bought by corporations and are sponsored. So most of the novel takes place in the year of the Depend Adult Undergarment. Now, ONAN has been formed, spearheaded by the celebrity Motown crooning newly elected president, Johnny Gentle, to eradicate what is this new toxic Great Concavity which has formed in New England. Now, the president, Johnny Gentle, is trying to annex the Great Toxic Concavity into Quebec, which has basically birthed a terrorist separatist group of wheelchair-bound assassins called the Wheelchair Assassins, who are trying to hunt down a copy of Infinite Jest, the original copy, to use to accomplish their own political goals as a terrorist weapon. There are literally dozens of important characters to follow in Infinite Jest, and while some of them have much higher page counts than others, they all play an important part in furthering and communicating the main themes of the novel. Now, why is Infinite Jest so hard? As I mentioned before, I think that the difficulty of the novel is certainly overstated. Its reputation precedes itself. I don't think that Infinite Jest is hard to read from a comprehension standpoint. It's just hard to read. Throughout Infinite Jest, David Foster Wallace demands that the reader takes a very active role and become an active participant in the actual act of reading the novel themselves. So as fun as it is to read, this is not a novel that you can bring to the beach or on a cruise. Infinite Jest truly is something that you want to curl up into your favorite chair with, get comfortable, and really read it. The novel is almost encyclopedic in nature, meaning that you will be presented with lots and lots of excruciating details on the characters, and their interactions and their feelings, and oftentimes the setting, but not necessarily the plot. Now, this can be hard for some people to not really receive a whole lot of information themselves on the plot. Now, the makeup of the novel is about 1,000 pages of main text, of the main story, but then you have an additional 100 pages or so of footnotes. This means that you're going to be spending a lot of time flipping back and forth between the main story and the additional footnotes, which are sometimes quick little notes, quick little quips, and sometimes they're whole scenes. But at the same time, while the actual act of reading Infinite Jest is far from passive, it does take a lot of concentration. It's also oddly welcoming and friendly at the same time. David Foster Wallace never alienates the reader with all of this information. It may be work, but Infinite Jest is, at least in my opinion, compulsively readable and fun to piece together. So, how should you read a novel like Infinite Jest? You kind of have to mentally set yourself up that you are going to be living in this world for a while. You have to know that you need to be a little patient, and you may have to put some other books that are kind of waiting on your shelf aside. There are many details and tiny interactions that totally illuminate future scenes in the book too, so you're going to want to try to keep them all in your head as much as you can. The more that you dive into Infinite Jest, the more that you are going to get out of it. But I do want to talk about Infinite Jest as a sum of its parts and what it did for literature for its time in the mid-90s. It is, first and foremost, a piece of literary and pop culture rebellion. I mean, Infinite Jest truly tried to change how fiction was presented in the mid-90s. Infinite Jest is the anti Alanis Morissette, Reality Bites, Janine Garofalo. Let's just sit in a coffee shop and smoke cigarettes and talk about how much the world hates us, and oh yeah, Bill Clinton sucks kind of a mindset. This totally is a rebellious act against the sense of cynicism and irony that permeated pop culture in the 90s. David Foster Wallace is actually credited for popularizing a literary movement called the New Sincerity. This means that characters in Infinite Jest, especially characters as a part of the Incandenza family, while they are truly terribly dysfunctional, they are refreshingly sincere and pure in their motives. The Incandenza family doesn't intentionally try to hurt each other. They love each other deeply, but they're also desperately unhappy characters, and from that fact, they are deeply hurting each other. What makes Infinite Jest so revolutionary for its time is how much it challenges you as the reader to attach yourself to the characters as opposed to detach yourself and judge them from a distance. And yet, miraculously, he somehow doesn't veer into Spielbergian sentimentality either. But it is pure in intention, in a way that it feels like David Foster Wallace is saying, hey, come here. Let's sit down and let's explore these themes together in a very earnest kind of way. And honestly, too, I really believe that DFW was onto something. He strangely predicted a lot of different pieces of our culture here now in 2020, including a Netflix-like service. He predicted Netflix. He also predicted that if there's ever like a FaceTime function, video chatting, Zoom meetings, that people will soon grow very fatigued from it. He even predicted that in the future, America will have a celebrity president that runs as an outsider with a presidential campaign motto that sounds eerily similar to "Drain the Swamp." So who should read Infinite Jest? Do you have the right mindset right now to enjoy a novel like Infinite Jest? Do you have the patience to keep track of all of these characters' lives and motives and actions of the novel as well? And do you want to? Does it sound fun for you to try to piece all these little pieces together? So what did I think of it? If you can't tell already, I loved it. I thought it was hilarious, sometimes a little bit scary. It's invigorating and energetic, and it feels like the author is writing the novel just for you and your ears or your eyes. I unironically love Infinite Jest, and I'm sure that many of you will too.